And so what happens if you you're doing your best to pick employees that are aligned with those values, but what happens if you get somebody and actually they're just not? Like, what do you do in that instance?
It's an interesting one. So we do values-based recruitment in the first place. So we're looking to see the people coming in, they're aligned with our values, because it's not good for somebody if they're not. Anyway, are they? Not good for us, not good for them. They better be somewhere else. And then, like I say, it's part of the training anyway. So we sort of outline. I think that's really important if anyone's thinking of setting up a compassion-based culture. The values have to be very explicit from the offset. So it's a bit like, this is what we're doing. This is kindness is non-negotiable. It's just like non-negotiable. It's not optional to be cruel, to be unkind, to be putting other people down, to be. We have a sort of set of values which I can sort of discuss in a bit more detail, but kindness and positivity are really core. So people have supervisions as well. So if somebody's, say, being a bit negative or something, being a bit like, that's not kind of what we do. So they'd have a bit of a supervision. Obviously, everybody has a moment, don't they? We all have days where we get a bit irritable, get our hair off, or that's not so much of a problem if people are a bit like, oh, I'm really sorry, I'm sort of stressed. That's kind of normal, human, isn't it? But it's not the problems, which are more the problems, are where people are sort of that sort of underlying negativity and undermining things and undermining other people is quite problematic.
So in supervision, you'd be sort of trying to, if there were areas like that, you'd be trying to bring them up and talk about them with the person.
Yes.
And maybe they could change that
Yes.
and kind of go, oh, actually, I realise that's not helpful, not appropriate.
Yes.
Maybe I can work with that.
Yeah. And a lot of the time people do, actually. They kind of work, so you've got to cut people a bit of slack. And because they've probably been working in workplace cultures where that's acceptable.
Yeah, where it's just normal.
Yeah. Exactly, normal thing. And there seems to be, but I say on that values training as well, it's about like being watching out for this sort of them and us thing.
Yeah.
The them and us, it's this sort of dualistic mind, isn't it?
Yeah.
So watch out for the them and us, because that's the root of the toxicity of coming in and breaking the culture. Because when people start going, it could be staff and service users, therapists and care staff. It's a bit like them over there are doing that, and it comes from a position of we're obviously doing it brilliantly here and they're all terrible.
I so remember that from working at the NHS. It was always like, the culture would be that you complained about, I don't know, if it was your ward, the next door ward, or the nurses complained about the doctors, or the physios complained about the nurses, or the physios complained about the next door physio team, or and everyone complained about the managers.
Yes, the managers, fair game. In most organisations, there's an unwritten rule where managers are fair game.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that is not kindness.
Managers are human. And they're doing their best.
And most of them are doing trying their very best in a very difficult circumstance.
Completely.
So we say it's unconditional positive regard, is sort of Carl Rogers in health and social care psychologist, which is ubiquitous across health and social care. But often people just apply it to the service users. Yeah. But actually it's unconditional positive regard to all beings, to everybody. I'll say it's the person who's collecting the clinical waste. Yeah. It's to the manager, it's to the director, it's to the family member. It's kindness. Kindness is non-negotiable. Because anything less is cruelty, isn't it? It's kind of the thin end of the wedge. And it doesn't make any sense. You're just saying like the physios with the nurses. Well, when you break it down, it's not that the nurses are all one big lump of person. It's like, I would say, which nurse and what circumstance, and let's look at this. So you have to, going back to upholding the culture, it's interesting because having a kindness culture, you really have to, first of all, outline the principles, the values which you want to uphold, and let people have to be clear on them, because it's not fair. You can't pull people up on something that they didn't really know they were supposed to be doing. And the second thing, you do need to manage it, and boundaries are essential to a kindness culture, because you can't just be kind to everyone, or otherwise you'd be like, I'll be kind to you now, you can have 3 weeks off work. That's not kind for the other people who have to pick up work, is it? So it has to be sort of fair, and you have to know where the boundaries are when people are stepping over that, and you have to fight for that. So people would often say when I set up Ariya, they'd say, oh, you're so lucky to have all those lovely staff. It's a bit like, no, I'm very fortunate. I'm very fortunate these wonderful people are coming to work for me, but I'm not lucky because actually we've worked on this.
You've set up conditions
for it to happen
that mean that people are able to behave in those ways. So you've got the clear set of values that you've told people about, and then you've got boundaries where you can have discussions with people when they're overstepping them. And I imagine there would be some people that you have said, actually, you're not suited to working here.
Yeah, this isn't going to work. Yeah. So we can normally be quite careful on people's probationary period. And if it, like I say, if they're consistently going through, they're consistently trying to undermine what we're doing, it's just like, we don't. Obviously, there's plenty of other places they can go and be a mood hoover, can't they?
No shortage.
Yes, exactly.
Negativity, you're welcome anywhere.
Exactly. So you pull it up with people. You want people to change, but ultimately, if they want to continue in that way, well, they can do it, but just not here. It's like you do have to. That is. It's what you have to do as a manager. If you want to, if you're letting all those people in, then it erodes. All the good people then decide to go because they don't want to be around that. And it's like, well, it's a choice, isn't it? And I often say to them, well, this isn't going to work, is it? Because actually, I'm going to have to keep pulling you up on this, and you're not going to really like this. So actually, I just think it's better probably with part company. Most of the time, people are like, I can kind of see that. And actually, weirdly, it's sort of with a bit of kindness, and maybe people learn as well. They sort of think, well, actually, I can't act like that, or it has its consequence. And in some ways, that is a kindness. So sometimes I've done no manager wants to do disciplinaries. You want to be, and especially when we worked in doing a kindness culture. You just don't. You want everyone to be nice. That'd be great. But it's a sort of kindness to put those boundaries on the expected content that we want, really. And I think that some of the people, when I've done a disciplinary, that actually I think they've learnt from it. Yeah. And they're probably going out into the world and being better in their other workplaces now.
So how many staff does Ariya employ at the moment?
Last time I looked on the payroll, it was about 135. So yeah, it's grown quite a bit.
Yeah, it's quite a few, isn't it? And can you, I don't know if you've got any sort of particular story of any particular individual, whether that's like patients or staff, or just where you could really see something transformative happening, or somebody's preconceptions about what it was going to be like shifting.
Gosh, there's so many. So yeah, I'll give a couple of examples. I'll give staff one first. So we also do a lot of staff development. I think it's twofold. We're developing the people in their rehab, and we're developing the staff. And they kind of, this sort of works together, really. It's an environment where people flourish. So we do a lot of things like job crafting and what people want to do and what they want to achieve, and we try and find ways for them to be able to do that and expand out within, not just stuck within their job description. And so we're always looking to see how people can grow and develop. And like you said earlier, sometimes you have to say to people, actually, I think you could do this. So actually, I think you could apply for this, or why don't you stretch out and do this? So I do a leadership and developing mentoring course. And 1 year, I'd had this girl in her interview. She said she wanted to develop to become a senior support worker, but she hadn't applied onto the course. So I went and tracked her down. She was hiding somewhere, and I was like, she says, I can't do it. And she had a speech difficulty, so it's a bit like a stutter, but when she got nervous or she was in groups of more than a one-to-one, it'd sort of freeze, so she couldn't say. She says, well, I can't be a senior, can I, if this is happening? And I was like, yes, come on the course. You don't have to say anything, we'll adapt it so you don't have to do the feedback in the groups, and we'll just see how it goes. And we also, I paid for her to have a speech and language assessment over a few weeks to see if we could kind of see what was going on and see if it could help her. And she gradually got the confidence, and because we've got a whole lovely, kind team as well supporting her, they would support and encourage her. We have things like at the beginning of the handovers, people would either say like a positive word or a positive thing about the person next to them. This is what it's like, it's all just embedded in. And they were encouraging her to be able to sort of prep and speak and supporting her to do it. And through time, we were working with her confidence. She became a senior support worker. She's now an assistant manager.
Wow.
So it's kind of, it's transformative in that way. It's going back to that, seeing the potential in people and supporting, enabling them the best they can to do things and to develop. So we'll do that. If somebody, say, isn't successful in applying for a promotion, then we'd look at ways of how they can get the skills that we won't just go, oh, you didn't get it. It's like, well, you need to work on this area. Let's have a plan for how to do it. And then the service users, gosh, there's so many. Yes, we had. I think it's sort of the reasons why we do it. Really, there's one gentleman who was I'd seen him in hospital. He was hoisted. He didn't have any speech, and the rehab team there sort of said he hasn't got much rehab potential apart from his speech, and that's the only reason he came to us. They didn't think he could walk again.
So not hoisted, like he can't actually move other than like by being lifted by a machine and held by several carers. Yeah, I'm just adding that in.
Yes, sorry. so in the sector. So yeah, he didn't even have any sitting balance. He couldn't sit upright. And this guy had his aneurysm in his early 30s, 3 days before he was going to propose to his fiancée. And this guy is interesting. I had him and 2 other assessments which came in the same week. A young 18-year-old had fallen off his motorbike. Another guy had had an assault. He'd been attempted strangulation and he survived. And I had these 3 people at a point where I thought, I'm not doing any more services. I was a bit like, oh gosh, I've got to do this for these people. But they came in and they've all moved out in their rehab. But the first guy I was talking about, we worked with him with his speech and language therapist, worked with him to be able to propose. And eventually she said yes. So, and he managed to walk down the aisle with a stick and say all his vows in the church. And they've now moved into their own houses at the service. So that's kind of what we do with the magic, but it's to do with the kindness culture within that is that it gives people the safe space. It's safe space for the staff to develop and developing their skills. And for the service users, kindness creates safety. And if somebody's frightened and they're in traumatized space, they need kindness. It's the only thing, because you only feel safe and trust people who are kind. It's sort of logical, just logical, isn't it? So you've got this vulnerable person who has got to relearn to stand on legs which don't work. You have to have a team round who believe you can do it and can work with you on your own level to be able to do that, but with that kindness. And I fundamentally believe the rehab outcomes and everything else and the staff development comes fundamentally out of the kindness culture.
It's like kindness has an effect. It's not just nice. It's actually having an effect.
It's thunderous. I think that's the idea of people thinking it's pink and fluffy. It's transformative. And all kindness has an impact. If you think of whoever that was on that retreat in the late 90s who helped me sweep the floor, that woman has kind of added on to Ariya. That kindness had its impact.
And they'll probably never know.
They'll never know. Maybe they're listening to this and they go, oh, that was me. But you don't know the consequences of your actions. But I think we can be confident that the consequences for kindness are going to be positive on one shape or one. Might not feel like it at the time.
I really like that phrase about kindness being thunderous. And powerful. So tell me a bit about kind of looking to the future, because can Ariya continue? It's like, is it possible to set up services that are going to be able to continue past your involvement with them.
Well, I hope so. I mean, the services themselves, I mean, they're so amazing, the staff team. And the culture's just imbued in the services. It's sort of, the investors and people said it was the values were irrefutably embedded in the culture. And if you phoned up one of my staff now and asked them about value-based what we did, they'd just sing like a canary. It'd just be there. So, and actually they're better at it than I am. I see these people day in, day out, and they're more patient, they're more kind. I mean, it's quite a mirror. It's like, it's very humbling. I think, gosh,
what happens when you have a really grumpy day?
Yeah, but this is problematic. Yeah, it's quite difficult, because if you set this up, they're a bit like, Lucy, it's not really right, isn't it? But they're so kind, they wouldn't even do that. That's the thing. Yeah, the irony of it is they're more kind, I think, than I am. It's kind of like they're more patient. They're very selfless. Just any opportunity to kind of help one another, they'll just do it. I had one of the girls, we had put out a QA assistance position. A lot of people kind of like this job, and then one girl sort of said, what's quality assurance. So it's people who keep an eye on the quality and make sure we're continuing on the good work. And this one girl said, I'd really like to do this position, but actually my colleague would like to do it as well. So I wonder if we could do a job share. And I just thought that's just symptomatic of just one example, isn't it, from last few weeks, where it's not like, well, I want that promotion and what's she got which I haven't, or whatever. It's just her natural response was, it'd be nice if she could do it too. And it just, that's so beautiful, isn't it? That's so, so they're doing it, and more and more I've trained people up and they're continuing that on. I think that's going to continue on anyway. I'd like personally to be doing more writing and things, to be able to write down what we've done so that other people, or do workshops and things so that people can learn from the experience that we've had. That would be great. That'd be my idea, to spread it a bit further afield, so through time. That's what I'd plan to do. I'd like to think those people go off and carry on, and even the people who leave us and go on to do other things, they know that they've got that as a benchmark. So I have people who say they go to the place, they say it's not quite Ariya, but I'll try and take some Ariya with me. And it's a bit like, because I saw it on retreat here, I saw it done, and I'd like to think that they can see it being done, and that's their benchmark moving into their future, and it's become a reality that a kindness culture can happen. I mean, some of the workplaces probably do. It's probably not just Ariya, isn't it? But if we think about, if everybody worked with their workplace culture to make it as kind as possible, which is evidence-based.
I think this evidence-based thing is just going to be so important in allowing people in a secular environment to actually take it seriously and not just think, oh, this is pink, this is fluffy, this is woo-woo. Carry on.
Yeah, but I think this is the turning point, and I really feel like this is, because we've got that, it's not just us being a bit weird and, I was going to say a bit weird and Buddhist, but it's not, because when I first set it up, I was very conscious that was one of the things which is more difficult, is to kind of secularize things, so get the good stuff in there without it sounding like I'm trying to push my faith on other people. Because you're working with a whole set of people with different backgrounds, different faiths.
And do they know you're Buddhist?
Yes.
And do they know the values are Buddhist? Although the thing is, like, a lot of different faith traditions have the same sort of underlying values, but how much are they aware that you're coming from the Buddhist tradition?
I think they're probably aware that it's coming from me and my value base, and they'll know. But it's not, in some ways, I secularize it, so it's not so much. Although these days there are things which you can bring in, which I wouldn't have been able to do a few years back. So I've got, we do a TLC timeout, so somebody can pass the card if it's getting a bit too much, and they're at risk of, say, getting some compassion fatigue. And they can just say to the team leader, I just need to take some time out. We have a wellbeing corner, and they can go and in a separate room and go and take some time out. And one of the things in there is the metta bhavana, that they can do the metta bhavana, which is evidence-based, to mitigate against compassion fatigue, because actually it's a different system of moving towards somebody rather than a fear-based response of pulling away. And so probably 5 years ago I wouldn't quite have had the guts to write at the Metta and say this is one of your options to do when you're getting compassion fatigue. I don't call it the Metta, I call it compassion-based meditation, but that there's more, I think, a secular interest in well, obviously mindfulness has been around for a fair bit of time, but also having the evidence base of these things make it a little bit easier to bring these things which people can find beneficial, whatever their background is. They don't have to be a Buddhist to be able to do it. It's optional. You can do that, or they can have a hot chocolate out of the well-being basket, you know, whatever. They have those things. So those things are a bit easier, but I do talk about some of those. I do have snuck in the Brahma Viharas into one training session on building resilience. So don't call it Brahma Viharas. So, but there are kind of things which are sort of in there. They probably know that this is Lucy's sort of thing, but you know, if it makes a difference to people, it's helpful. They can choose to use it. So I think it's a really interesting time, and I think personally, that if really this is the time where we can really bring dharmic practice to help more people, not sort of almost bring it out of the centres really into the workplaces. People can have this kindness, people will benefit. There are lots of people out there who don't want to be a Buddhist, don't want to get sucked into all that. I mean, like eventually, like me by accident, but
they don't want to work in toxic work environments either.
No, exactly, but they want to be a more human environment, and the Dharma is being more human and being more truly themselves. So creating the environments where people can flourish and be more human, be kinder, uncover. So like it's you don't create a kindness culture, you uncover it.
Oh, that's so lovely.
Because they've all got it. Like I say, they are like, it's like a secular sangha. They are looking after each other. So I just think there's something, as much as the world is difficult, and as much as people are racked by anxiety and all these other things, it's possible to create environments for people to flourish. And I think in some ways that there's an appetite for it, done in the right way, not sort of doing it in a kind way, and setting it up well. It's possible. And just think if everybody went to their workplace and made it a little bit kinder. I mean, what an impact it'd have on everybody.
I think it's just extremely inspiring. And anything in particular you'd like to say before we close? I mean, you might just have said it. That might be the thing you've just said. But anything that you feel like you'd really like to say that you haven't yet had a chance to say?
I think I said quite a lot. I think the main things are there. I think only that it's just really important, in my experiences, my practice and work as a practice, I think there's something very galvanising about it, and that it gives you a level of energy. And I think for myself and in my personal practice, that obviously words practice and that's make a difference, but in terms of like my spiritual development, or kind of me my meditation practice, I do feel like actively being in work which is put myself so fully into gives a level of energy, so that when you're on the cushion that things make a difference. So it's not wasted time. It feels to me, I don't think my practice would have shifted in the way that it has done over the last few years if I hadn't focused my energy and my strengths. And I do really believe that you need to utilise your personal strengths, whatever they are. That's sort of what we're gifted with, isn't it? And there's a lot of strengths. I could talk about evidence-based stuff. It's my passion, isn't it? But there's a lot of strengths-based research where the theory being is you have your dominant strengths, which also you can overuse, so you have to be quite careful on that. But you have your strengths, and the other strengths are just underutilised. You don't really have weaknesses, you just have strengths which you not necessarily using so much. But your core strengths, you really have to galvanise those and plough those into your work, into your everyday life, whatever those are. And to a certain extent, when I'm working with people, my staff, we're focusing on those because nobody was ever successful by really just focusing on their weaknesses all the time. You know, I wouldn't have got very far doing French and maths, you know, it just wasn't my thing. So it's sort of really, the important thing is you've got a very short life. So it's galvanising those things which we can really give and really fully giving them into everything and thinking, in this situation, how can I help to the best of my ability in every day, in every moment? And that energy, that's energy is the root of achievement, isn't it? So you've got, Joseph Goldstein talks about that, but this energy being so important. One of the things which is mentioned so much in the practice of enlightenment is energy of putting in and applying it to the good in whatever way you can. And I think that energy then and that focus in sense your off cushion or outside means that when you sit in your Dharma practice, you've got some energy. Because it's not going to be there, is it, if you're drifting around the rest of the time.
And also, I just really liked how you were talking about your being able to put your energy into work, which is expressing your value and your spiritual practice, and that then gives you energy for your spiritual practice. So it's not something that drains you. So it's all kind of everything's augmenting rather than kind of taking.
Yes.
I mean, I have to say, it is how I personally experience team-based right livelihood, you know, working at Taraloka. Yeah, it's just so gorgeous hearing you describe how you're really able to use your energy and put it into the world in that way. Do you want to say anything about your relationship with white Tara, do you? Because I'm just, you know, when you were talking to me about white Tara, and you've got this very, very active life and going out there, stepping out, giving, and then you've got white Tara as this very, very serene wisdom figure in the background. I don't know if there's anything you want to say about that.
So it's interesting because you'd sort of think, since my connection would be more with green Tara, but I think my work's green Tara, the active being out there in the world. So I feel a bit like they're two sides of the same coin, aren't they? So the green Tara very much the active doing work, all the stuff I've described, and then my inner practice very much is white Tara, and it's this level of, it's almost the counterbalance to the green Tara in a sense. So I'm just really, I suppose, attracted to or appreciate or love dwelling in this receptivity of white Tara. So eyes kind of yes, they're all seeing those wisdom eyes, but they're receptive. So it's about, for me, it's about that deep connection with the Buddha mind as well, the sort of white insight really of the nature of bliss and emptiness, and actually that the action comes out of that, but my practice always feels like a bit of a dance on that spectrum of going from green Tara out into the world and giving, which, like you say, just gives back anyway, and this also sort of stepping and dwelling and merging into the emptiness of the nature of mind. That ultimately there isn't the me behind here generating anything or doing anything. It is the world's there, and it's my mind responding to that interface. And actually behind all of this is emptiness but metta. And in a sense, our work it's that green Tara coming out of that and bringing that into the world, and that's our job, isn't it? It's in a church last week, and there's little panes of glass which are letting the white light through, and I was thinking, oh, that's what we're like. We're like these little portals of glass, aren't we? With that Buddha, pure nature, and it's almost clearing those obscurations. The more we do that, then the more the light can come through, and that's sort of all we have to do is let that come through out into the world. And how amazing, and sometimes we might be in a whole window with lots of other panes of glass doing something really quite beautiful. But yeah, that's where my practice sits, really, on this receptive aspect and sort of a giving aspect.
So yeah, that's really gorgeous. Actually, what it's making me think of is something that Sangharakshita says about wisdom and seeing the nature of mind or the nature of emptiness, and compassion, caring for beings. And he says they're a paradox, and you can't ever unite them in a conceptual way. And he says the life of an individual practitioner is the living synthesis. You can't think about them and make them the same, and yet you can live it. And I think you're a really beautiful example of somebody really living that interaction between wisdom, that receptivity, Maitrisiddhi, and compassion, really stepping out and engaging every day, and both of them having to be there. And if one of them wasn't there, well, things would be quite different. It wouldn't be looking like this flow where you give and energy comes back, and you give and energy comes back. Yeah. So thank you very, very much for having me, doing this interview. And it's always a delight when you come to Taraloka retreats, and please keep coming.
Oh, I will. Try to keep you away. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Woo!
Woo. Did we do okay?